Good evening, everybody. It is February 17th, 2021, and Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 3 or Episode 8, depending on what order you go by, The Changeling, is over and has been since 1967. But we're just getting started here on Wednesday night TED Treks as we continue our mission to watch every original series episode, not in order. Bringing in first the namesake of this podcast, my dad, Ted. How are you doing, Dad?
I'm doing good, thanks. Hi.
Good. Also joining us again is esteemed panelist Jody Simpson. Hey, good evening, Jody.
Well, hello, Dave.
I just caught you there.
All right. That was my entrance.
It was good.
You.
I was like, oh, does he know?
I tried. Let's see if Adam does better.
Well, yes, and bringing in next is Adam Woodward. How are you doing tonight? Oh, caught in the act he is.
That was weak. I know.
It was okay.
It was all right. He got a moment to prepare.
How you guys doing?
Doing well. How you doing, Adam?
I'm great.
And we're here to talk about The Changeling from 1967, about Nomad. Jeff Mader, not sure where he's at, if he's coming or not, but if he shows up, we will also ask him what he's thinks about this episode. But we're going to start with my dad. The Changeling, the Nomad, this whole story. What are your thoughts?
Well, it was a good episode, but if you want to go through it and look for inconsistencies, you could find probably quite a few. But if you just looked at it for what it was kept you interested right to the end. So I thought it was okay.
What was it? What did you think it was?
What do you mean? What did I think?
Well, you said if you look at it for what it was. I was like, well, what was
it? Oh yeah, well, it was basically it's a story about this space probe, like Voyager, like that movie Voyager. It was called Nomad.
You also drew those comparisons to Voyager, yes. Yes. But this came before Voyager, so the Voyager was kind of ripping off.
It's similar, but it was kind of lost in space, and then it got in this collision with some other planet or something, and then it kind of merged with this other probe, and they mixed the two intents together, and thus the story.
Yes, right. Okay, I understand. Yeah. Okay, Jody.
Mm-hmm.
The Changeling, not like Odo, not like some other famous...
No, it is not Odo, and I think you've already done that joke.
Well, hey, but I got to bring it up.
Oh, okay.
It's the episode named because the Changelings are a species within Star Trek that became famous through Deep Space Nine. Dad doesn't know anything about that, so you and Adam do.
I don't. I can honestly say
that. but this is I guess an earlier use of the word, but Star Trek they would never do this again in Star Trek, so it kind of has this unique place in history. But anyway, that aside, this episode, the story, where does it sort of rank for you? The comparisons to Voyager being pretty obvious, I think. And
well, I won't tell you my score because I don't want to give up the ending to this podcast.
Okay,
but I will say it's kind of campy. It reminds me a lot of that, and I don't really know why, but it reminds me a lot of that Next Gen episode of the three people that were on the. It was like a probe kind of thing, same idea, where they wake up and they find out they're in the 23rd century or whatever. It reminds me a lot of that, and I don't know why, because really there's not a lot to connect it to. Other than there was a probe in space at one point.
But I guess the connection there would be like sort of ancient, like Earth space exploration history.
Yeah.
But it's a fictional history because...
And we find out later, obviously, that the probe has been manipulated in a way, perhaps, I guess is a good way to say it. Overall, I think it's a pretty solid episode. As Ted has already said, there is a lot of inconsistencies in the story. There's quite a high body count in this episode too, which I thought was interesting because usually they average like 1 or 2 deaths.
At least 4, I think.
There was it depends on if you pick the engineering people near the end, because the engineering people near the end, they check for their pulse, but they don't say whether or not they're alive or not.
They seem to be okay. The guys came in and were dragging them away. I don't think they would have done that if they were dead. So
No,
I think they were
true.
okay.
The
But
only thing that kills me in this entire episode is probably the whole Uhura subplot thing with her having to like relearn everything. And near the end, it's like, oh, she's reading at like a university level. She'll be fine next week. It's like, what?
Yeah, we're gonna come back to that. I don't want to deep dive.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far into it, but overall, it's not a bad episode. I think it's got some interesting points, especially for being 60s sci-fi. This is it's got some kind of cool premises to it.
Yes, Adam, the Changeling.
I liked this episode. It wasn't. It definitely reminded me of other things. It reminded me of the one with Dr. Daystrom a few weeks ago that we watched as well. Especially the whole logic and trying to get the probe to understand itself and whatever. We'll get to that too. But the Uhura bit bothered me as well, Jody.
Well, and there's some kind of weird racial undertone there too, which I don't think they wanted to do, but they kind of did anyway.
Yeah, well, there's also
kind of like,
again,
I gotta watch my words on this one.
I don't know. I want to know more about what you're talking about, but I gotta.
Well, we'll talk later about that. I think, yeah.
Okay, I think so. Because I think we're talking the same thing, and but again, I didn't like. I liked the episode. I liked the probe. I liked the look of it. It was cool. I mean, it wasn't.
They did a pretty good job, I thought, Adam, of actually moving the probe around.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't too bad. There was a couple times where you're like, oh, it's on a skateboard or something like that.
Oh, for sure.
But there's a lot of times where it looks pretty good.
You never saw the top or the bottom, in full, right?
Oh, there was a couple shots where you saw both. And I couldn't see any lines or anything, so they must have done some sort of trickery.
Yeah, the robot, I think for the time, the technology, this is very comparable to the robot we saw in Requiem for Methuselah, which was also like some kind of a similar looking thing kind of floating around. But this is season 2, so this is a year earlier. Let's take a look here at Nomad. It's boxy, but I get that in the 1960s, this was kind of an interesting way to present this kind of science fiction concept on screen, on a TV screen. I just think that when this thing materializes on the transporter pad at near the beginning of the episode, once they've sort of established a dialogue, the dramatic music and the score, I think, is a little overused. I would go as far as to say, because it's like da da da. Look, it's a robot. And they're like, how could a robot be doing these things? Because this sort of innocuous looking object had eradicated the life off 4 planets at the beginning of this episode. It's been its programming has been corrupted. And so it's like exterminating everything that's biological in its way, kind of with shades of maybe Control, Adam, from Discovery. Or some other. This seems to be a common thing, though, in science fiction. Machines want to kill.
My wife watched this show with me, and she goes, she saw the relationship between the Borg and this rather than here, but she doesn't know motion pictures so well. But she hit the Borg, which I thought was interesting as well.
Adam, did you pick this episode?
I didn't.
Who was?
I think it was your dad.
Okay.
You were going to pick it, but then you didn't have one right away.
I got questions about this because I need to understand how this episode is sort of in the mythos of original series and where it is, because I got the distinct impression watching this tonight that it was sort of the episode that maybe made Spock famous, or sort of like it gave, because Spock's whole mind meld scene here and everything else that goes on, I think, was kind of a big deal. I feel like that's like they basically had a lot of different storylines they could have drawn upon when they went to do V'ger, and they ended up doing the motion picture. And for whatever reason, they basically copycatted this story into that movie with some other things.
Well, there's elements of it for sure. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm kind of wondering why. Why is this episode sort of like the episode that made Spock famous, or Kirk talking the computer to death here? Or what, Dad, what do you know about this episode? Sort of back from I guess from the time in the 70s. Did you have awareness of it?
I don't know if it made him famous. No, I don't think that's the case.
Well, this is the second season too. Like, this is already well established in.
Yeah. I don't think it was that.
because I was just trying to figure out why. I'm like, why is this episode so revered? Why is it like, because it's clear, like, or maybe they just like threw a dart at a dartboard and said, okay,
well, this is the episode that they always pair up on the videotapes and everything with the con episode. What the hell is it called again?
Space
Seed. That's it. Yeah. Actually, Dave, I gave you a video disc. That's what's on this video disc.
Yeah, it's up here. It's
yeah, well, you can't see it, but yeah, the video disc has this epised and Space Seed. They're always kind of put together, which is kind of weird.
Changeling, that's right. Yeah. Because they were aired. Well, Space Seed season 1, and this is season 2. But yeah, I think that's a good point, Jody. Yeah, because it seems like the Changeling was basically, that story was kind of copycatted, adapted in some ways into Star Trek 1, and Space Seed is obviously Star Trek 2. So, or a continuation of that story. So I'm like, these have to have been two of the big, most popular stories. And I think that, maybe there's some inconsistencies, maybe there's some things, but this is like almost like an old school serialized like science fiction story.
It's almost like a radio play version of Star Trek in a way. Like, it's very the story is always moving, but there isn't much of a story, but it looks like there is, which is, I thought, was kind of interesting. But it's overall, I think the episodes, from a sci-fi viewpoint, and if we think about it, as Adam likes to point out, and as Ted always reminds us, this was made in the 60s, and it's one of those things where you kind of look at it now, but this has the same trope that they've used over and over again in Star Trek, which is Kirk can talk a computer out of anything, and it's one of those things that it's like, it doesn't even make sense that he was considered, the creator. What do they call him? The creator.
The creator.
So it's, to me, it's kind of, I've now, keep in mind, we're watching these out of order. So it's for us, it's hard for us to kind of comprehend how many times before this Kirk has actually talked the computer out of something.
Not that many times, because as we said, this is early in season 2, and
we're about halfway through the series at this point. Like, this is pretty close.
The only
to half.
time he's talked a computer to death before this is the Return of the Archons, which is later in season 1.
So in season 3, he does it quite a lot, though, from what I remember.
Season 2 and season 3. He continues doing it, but the first time he did it was in the Return of the Archons.
So maybe secretly Gene Roddenberry hated computers, and maybe he wanted his hero to always win over the sterile computer.
Well, I think the writers did. The writers wanted people to be presented as better than machines. I think that's a human thing, isn't it? Like, or
well, we like to think we're still better, but in reality, are we? I guess is.
And there's always this like, hey, machines could kill us if they think we're inferior to them because they are cold, exacting logic. As
Isaac Asimov and various other sci-fi writers have all already written those things many times over. So yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. Because and this episode was produced later in season 2. It was the 8th season produced. It was the 8th episode produced, but it was aired 3rd. So therefore, that meant they thought this episode was strong. This was something they wanted to get up more. This was
a series season openers.
Right.
First 5 episodes, yeah.
And they talk about how as I keep coming back to Spock in this mind meld scene tonight, and like this one on,
which we actually have a comment about, I think. If I
see Spock, we got a comment here, yes, from Spock's mind melds with a machine in Picard, and android mind meld with a human. Yeah, okay. So there's been several times here where Spock, other Vulcans, and in Star Trek Picard. Are you guys hearing something?
Yeah, I think it's your dad.
Dad, what are you doing?
Somebody's calling me.
Oh. Well,
it's one of those calls.
Yeah.
They usually do it right around now.
How many doing a podcast?
Oh, okay. Well, sorry. Yes.
Well, usually it's done at 8, and I'm usually on this at 7 8.
Right. Yeah, we're a little out. We're an hour later than usual tonight.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. We're on Eastern time. We're on instead of maritime time.
But anyway, that makes a good point, though. It's like the whole Spock melding with the computer, to me, doesn't make sense, but I guess it's something they
Right.
did
Well, I
anyway.
think it's the other trope of Star Trek is that you have these people like Spock, like Data, different people who have sort of these extraordinary abilities that allow you to sort of solve your mission that maybe you couldn't otherwise, right? They're sort of like they almost have superpowers in some ways. But it's been kind of inconsistent. Like, how can Spock mind meld with a machine? And then later on, we see some of the Picard androids, spoilers, yes, that they can learn the art of the Vulcan mind meld through study, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I was very critical of that episode at the time that
I think
it
we all
aired
were,
in Star Trek Picard, with that whole thing with
It
but
seems like eons ago, doesn't it?
but I guess the point is that the writers don't seem to have a ton of respect for it across all the series. Like they're like, yeah, whatever. I don't know if that's what the story calls for. Then our Vulcan character can do a Vulcan mind probe. He calls it, not a mind meld here in this episode. Dad, any thoughts on all the mind melds and the use of that to sort of get as a plot device?
No, I thought that mind meld thing was kind of typical of what. I mean, Spock did that with a rock one time. You got to remember that, right?
He did. Well, it was
that
a
rock
lava.
monster thing. Yeah.
Well, this was probably, but it seemed like he couldn't escape from this one. He was almost like held into it. Kirk had to shake him out of it. Usually he gets out of it on his own, but this one was a little tougher.
That's true.
It was. Okay, I think there's a number of things. I know we want to get to Uhura. Is there anything like? Do you guys want to walk through this plot by plot, or is more we can kind of focus on the big things? Was kind of like
there's not a lot of real plot points here. I don't think. It kind of drags a bit, but
there's things like Scotty's death, I think, and his resurrection here. I think
Does Scotty's death count as a death in Star Trek history, or does that count as a death?
he's not dead at the end of the episode, so I think it's fine.
I think it counts as a death. I think it counts. Well, like when Spock dies in Star Trek 2 and gets resurrected in Star Trek 3, like it's a longer period of time. He's dead,
But the Nomad wasn't there for 2.
How long was Scotty dead? Like an hour?
I thought like 10 minutes. Like honestly,
it wasn't long because there's a point where McCoy's like, "Well, you don't have a lot of time. Like this has to be done kind of right away."
Yeah.
Right. Scotty's very well adjusted from the experience.
Yeah. So how can they fix a Scotty so fast, but Uhura can't get her memories back?
I believe that she's a woman, Adam.
Oh my God! Yes. So there's that comment
of conflicting.
That's not the only problem we have here.
Oh, this show again is just extraordinary to me. Like, how can it be so advanced on one side on racial equality and all this stuff, and then it hits women so hard?
I'll go even farther. Why was Nurse Chapel in this episode at all?
Let's cue Dad. Dad, in the 1960s, we didn't know about equality.
It's funny that you should mention this because I was watching today some old 1960s shows on CHCH. I watched Get Smart. The villain today in Get Smart was a guy named Hercules, and it was remember in Star Trek the bad guy in The Wolf in the Fold, the little bald guy.
Yeah, well, the big guy, right?
Well, no, the little skinny little bald guy who was the alien. And they dispersed them out into space, much like this thing.
Oh yeah, like the Jack the Ripper guy, right?
Yeah. Anyway, but CHCH is now putting before every 1960s show, they're putting a disclaimer that the things in this show was filmed in the 60s, and it is old, and the point of views and the things that are in it are not necessarily good today, but we're showing it in it the way it was filmed at that time. And so they're trying to put so if they actually showed the old Star Trek, they would probably have that same disclaimer on there. It's basically just printed out on the full screen for just before the show starts.
Well, I think when I watched the original series on Netflix, I think the warning I get is sex. And I never really got that because
it wasn't really a sex thing, but it was more of a.
But they always warn you for sex. It's like.
I don't know how long the disclaimer would have to have been for all of the.
Yeah, and the disclaimer, the need for the disclaimer is interesting, and that's a whole podcast up on itself.
Yeah,
why do we
don't
need
have that kind of time?
a disclaimer to say such things, but apparently we do. So, but context is important, like the time and place this was made, but also the viewpoints of these writers and them choosing to like put these things in the script are pretty deliberate, and it is a contradiction, Adam. You're right. Like, how can they be so progressive? And we saw in this episode, we saw Mr. Singh down in the auxiliary control. Obviously, we have Uhura and Sulu and different members of this cast who are all very diverse and working together. And Uhura is shown to be a competent officer in this episode. She's kind of the one who kind of breaks through with the communication and working with Spock. And then her singing is kind of what her undoing suddenly. She's singing on the bridge, which I guess Scotty and the rest of them really enjoy, because she just kind of was doing it for like it was for like a concert or something. And then Nomad goes, "What is this communication? This isn't logical." And then he what does he do to her? He mind wipes her because she's like we said, a mass of conflicting impulses. Sorry,
that unit is a woman. A mass.
Yeah, just
there's a lot of unit things.
An interesting choice by this writer, who was John Meredith Lucas, to put that into there. Or, maybe we'll get to fun facts with Jody. We'll get a sense of how much maybe this was a Gene Roddenberry thing or a studio thing that we ended up with this result. But it's kind of it is sort of, it feels dated, this whole thing with Uhura, and then sort of the outcome. I want to talk about like what happened to her here. Did she just lose her knowledge? Did she lose her?
She turned into a baby with no knowledge. Apparently,
she had no memories.
Relearn how to read, but
no,
I thought was miraculous.
It's not true. She knew Swahili.
That's right. She knew Swahili. She didn't know English.
But did she lose her memories?
Yes, I think so.
Well, you get that impression, yeah.
Well, that's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
It was a big
especially
deal.
Over the course of a couple hours. They're like teaching her how to like do everything again. It's like, wow.
But again, the whole thing is they can resurrect Scotty, but they can't give her. Yeah. Was there even an attempt? I don't know.
No,
Nomad was not interested.
Nah, let's just put her in front of a monitor and let her learn again.
Nomad was like, I can't do it. It's too hard. Sorry.
Maybe there's an undertone there saying that women are far more complicated than we can appreciate.
Well, there was so much subtext to this. I don't even know what was going on, but it was like it was a big commentary on women, singing women, I think too.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just bizarre, and Uhura bounced back from this with remarkable, everything. They just did so well. She was just like, no problem. I'm good. She's already by the first grade by like a couple hours after losing her memories.
Reading the ball.
The ball is red.
Bluey.
So when you're seeing that episode, were you like that part? Were you thinking that it was actually going to be Bone? Because I'm like, is she going to say Bone or is she going to say Ball? And that was the most intriguing part of that entire experience for me.
I was thinking Bone.
I was thinking Bone too.
You know, one thing about that though, speaking of women, and Nichelle Nichols looked really good in this episode. She got a great smile.
I think she looks good in almost every episode she's in, though. Yeah,
she was.
But she does. Yeah, she definitely stands out in this episode for sure.
She was nearly going to leave the show at the end of the first season, and famously, Martin Luther King was the one who convinced her to stay. But I think that there might also be a sense of like maybe she wanted more presence on the show, and maybe this is a response to that. They gave her a bigger.
We got some stuff in the fun facts about that, I think.
Yeah, because they really, they show her off here. They have her working, they have her doing things, they have her singing, they have her being a major participant in the story up until a point, and then it's kind of
and you see her kind of doing her day-to-day thing too, which is kind of interesting as well. Like she, usually you kind of see her and she's only there for convenience. Like it's like, oh, we need somebody to talk to somebody to another ship, so cue her, right? Where this time, like you see her, it almost looks like she's doing a report and. She's got a whole bunch of things on the go kind of thing. And then, she's singing along and then all of a sudden Nomad shows up and he's a dick. So,
and I think this whole discussion just makes me think about like the whole 20th century was like this whole like conversation sort of with the Western world about like, okay, women in the workplace, and what does this mean?
Yeah.
And how are they still going to be this but not that? And like, I don't know. Like, it's just like it's clearly it took them. We're still wrestling with it today. I think in some ways, not like then, but it's interesting to look back at this kind of stuff and see it.
Oh, I think so. I think you're right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, David. The other thing that I thinking more about Nomad himself is like the thing that the Star Trek does sometimes is the machine looking for purpose, and which again is very conflicting to what a machine should be doing. A machine should just be existing, right? But I love the fact that Kirk was the creator. I always think that first of all, it has to be Kirk.
Of course.
And then they did the connection, which Spock, handily did very well. I think I can't remember what it was exactly, but some other guy had the name Kirk, right?
Yeah, this guy here, his name was Roy Kirk. What a case of mistaken identity here, and how fortunate it was for the Enterprise crew.
And Star Trek convenience.
If Kirk hadn't, they would have wrote it to be any name, but Nomad gets confused, thinking that Captain James Kirk is this guy, Jackson Roy Kirk.
This thing has the ability to resurrect people from the dead, but it can't figure out that this isn't the creator.
Well,
that's amazing.
His name was Roy Kirk. It wasn't Jackson Roy Kirk. It was Jackson Roy Kirk.
Right. It was like, his his surname started with R, not with K.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And but it sounded like Roy almost sounds like his middle name, like it does with James Tiberius there. But yes, but that's the whole thing. This is very fortunate for Kirk and everything. But and Kirk is a little bit cavalier, I would care to say here, with his role as
he's enjoying being called the creator.
Of course he is. It's Kirk.
It's Kirk. Because he takes it to the lab, right? And the star charts, and they're telling it things, and then Spock's trying to figure out what it is, right? Before they figure out that it's dangerous or that they have to go along with this. Kirk's just kind of having more of this diplomatic conversation with Nomad, kind of explaining things matter of fact. We're from Earth. Da 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 da, and then Spock goes, whoa, don't tell it you're not the creator, because it's definitely going to kill us if he doesn't think you're the creator, all right? And then Kirk later on, and Kirk's just Nomad, Nomad's super dangerous, and he does say later in his log that this is like a nightmare, but it sure doesn't feel like it most of the time here. Kirk is very casual. It's only when he finds out two of his men have been killed. But for good, not being brought back like Scotty here. Minutes before Nomad kills two more of them. So I think it's 4 security guards.
Well, that's kind of how the whole thing really ends. Is just a lot of red shirt security guards get killed, and then kind of they trap it back in the transporter room and then shoot it out.
At the beginning, I thought Singh was going to get whacked, but he somehow survived.
Who was gonna get whacked?
Singh in the control room.
Oh yeah, I was nervous for Singh. I didn't remember this episode. I feel like I've seen it, but I didn't really remember it.
But then again, watch the Nomad. That's your job.
That was your job, Singh. What's going on?
Yeah,
you got one fucking thing to do, and you did it and didn't do it.
One thing that threw me off too was that Singh was wearing the red overalls, but he referred to himself as a lieutenant at one point. That would be inconsistent.
He's got his work overalls on. He's he's working. What I think is more impressive out of all this is we have humanity going out to the stars. They're traveling. They're on their Star Trek, so to speak, and they don't have any protocol in place to beam in a weird item that they find while they're in the middle of space. There's no protocol.
That's shooting at them.
Yeah, that's shooting at them, and they're like, okay, no big deal. Let's bring it in.
The chase at the beginning, yes, right. The whole thing with Nomad, right.
But I guess it would make for a boring episode if they just kind of hit warp 5 and fucked off, right? They have to do something.
Well, what I think is interesting too, as we talked about V'ger and this, that the 60s and 70s, the world was sending up numerous
Oh
things
yeah,
in
it was
space,
the
right?
space fever. Right? Yeah.
Obviously, we went to the moon, but beyond that, there was different. There still are. They're still setting up things. There was something that just landed on Mars, I think, this morning. But this idea of that, like these things that go out into space, they're going to go out there forever. We don't know where the hell they're going to go. We're long after we're gone, and they could come back changed, or they could come back and bring things we don't like here. And a lot of science fiction writers clearly thought about this. About
well, we're going to mention that in the fun facts, actually.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think it's just because there wasn't
It's a
there
great premise, Dave. It's a great premise. I mean, it's a great storyline. Like, we can't go out into space, right now, further than Mars. Yeah. We haven't even done that.
We can't go across the street.
But you think of all the movies. What do you say?
I don't think he's talking in pandemic times.
Yeah, we can't even leave our house.
We can leave our house now.
Let alone go to Mars.
Yeah, as far as I go with Markham.
I ain't even going that far, but anyway.
It's crazy.
I'm staying within the city limits.
But you think about all these movies now that have been made since, like the Alien or whatever they did, have 4 movies, right? All the Mars kind of movies, where you go to Mars and you get killed and you meet aliens. Like, it's all so cool. Like, you can put anything into space and come back with stories. It's just fantastic.
Oh yeah, that's what you have you have all these different like Event Horizon and all these different sci-fi movies and stuff like that, where literally it's an endless landscape, right? So it's easy to kind of come up with anything.
Well, that's the thing about is that what really Star Trek for me boils down to, is like imagination and possibility and like sort of what could,
but they're not always good.
No, it's not always good, but it's not always bad either.
But that's probably the best thing about Star Trek, is the fact that it does show us that it's not always good. It's just like watching Lost in Space, like the original Lost in Space. Like, how many times did they get into trouble? But they had trouble amongst them as well. Like,
every episode.
Dr. Smith was a complete asshole, and it's like it kind of shows you that even though you're in space, they're still jackasses.
Right, and like they fight Klingons and they have antagonists and whatever.
Exactly.
But
that's what they should have did with this fucking Nomad. They should have like dropped it off at like fucking Klingon homeworld or something and been done with it.
They're very imperfect. They're very imperfect.
They're very imperfect. They have all these weird problems with their foreheads.
Yeah, we don't like. Sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. It's all over the place. Sometimes they have little claws.
Well, we don't talk about that, Dave.
Oh, right. We don't talk about that with outsiders. What next?
Fun facts.
No, you got some fun facts?
I can do fun facts now if you want.
Oh, jump into fun facts. Yeah, let's do it. We'll have.
I'm going red for fun facts.
Oh.
How exciting! All right. Bill Blackburn, which actually normally appears as Hadley in the series, appears in 3 different uniform colors in this episode: a blue uniform in the corridor scene, his usual gold, and a red technician's jumpsuit in main engineering. How
do you know he wasn't having a day like that guy in Lower Decks who just was trying out all the different divisions
trying it all out, seeing what stuck,
Yeah, he's like, I don't know what I want to be. I might be a yellow shirt, I might be a blue shirt, I might be a red shirt.
Are you saying the same guy was in 3 different uniforms?
Yes, one guy was in 3 different uniforms.
But he was acting as 3 different people, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's
my
the
understanding.
debate. That's what I'm saying. Or was he the same guy who just?
Or was he just the same guy that decided he wanted to try different career paths all through the day? Anyway, doesn't matter. Footage of the Nomad exiting the turbo lift was recycled to show him leaving sickbay. It was the
when he's coming out of sickbay, I'm like, that's not the same shot.
I actually noticed that, and I'm like, oh.
You didn't need to even do. They didn't even need to do that. Like it was just kind of like a.
Actor Joe Paz, who portrayed one of the security guards killed by the Nomad, the guard on the left outside Nomad's cell, would appear again in the episode Patterns of Force as an SA brigadier. There you go. He can be seen among those saying "Hail to the Fuhrer."
Maybe the Nomad brought him back to life.
Maybe.
You get struck down by the YouTube algorithm, Jody. Just
maybe we might be. We might be. Oh well. We don't feel that way. Very ironic that Kirk jokes about Nomad not only being his son, but that he's also a great doctor. 15 years later in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Kirk discovers that David Marcus is not only his son but a doctor.
Yeah,
There you go. There's
he was
some
so
irony.
he already had a son destined to become a doctor.
Oh,
Brings
there
a
you
tear
go.
to his eye. Like, okay, and like, we didn't really talk about the ending there, and sort of like Kirk's epilogue for Nomad and his relationship with Nomad, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I felt a little bad for him. I don't
didn't.
know. It felt like he was gloating or sort of just making it like
It was almost like he was proud that this thing ran around and killed some of his people. Maybe like the paycheck pricing went down or something. I don't know.
yeah,
Who
you're the
knows? Maybe
father
there's
of a
more rations
murderer, not a
available now.
doctor. Yeah, but he's like, but he
Yeah.
brought Scotty back to life. That was so impressive.
Yeah, let's be honest though. David Marcus was an ass too. Anyway. The story implied that Nomad was Earth's first probe out of the solar system. In actual fact, Pioneer 10 was the first craft to reach interstellar space. That's a real fact for you there.
That's
How
a real
exciting.
fun fact.
Was Kirk aware of Pioneer 10 though?
What's that?
Was Kirk aware of Pioneer 10?
That is unknown at this point. We don't
Yeah.
know. This episode marks the first appearance of the newly redesigned engineering section, which is true because I remember looking at it going, yeah, that's different. So there you
This
go.
was weird, this episode, because the entire episode was filmed on the ship.
Yes. Yeah, there was no away mission on this one. The away mission was
Yeah,
essentially
that's not-
engineering.
that doesn't happen that often, does it?
Yeah. This episode bears a striking resemblance to the Outer Limits episode, The Probe, which came out in 1965, which aired 2 years earlier. So there might have been some crosstalk there at one point or another. This episode also marks the first time Scotty uses the famous "giving them all we got" phrase. There you go.
Is it? Oh, I didn't even
It
pick up on
is.
that at all. I
Yes.
didn't hear
Well, at least from air date anyway, and I know how much you feel about air date, Dave. So, but we'll leave that where it is, I guess.
Well, it is what it is.
Although never credited, this episode, which depicts an Earth-launched space probe that acquires almost unimaginable power in the course of the search of its creator, became the inspiration behind Star Trek: The Motion Picture in 1979. This also inspired the Quizitors tapes, 1964, the rejected series pilot written by Gene Roddenberry and Gene L. Kuhn, which featured a robot with a damaged memory who searches for its creator. So basically, this episode is a recycled concept.
Like, it's good enough. It's an interesting science fiction story in a lot of ways.
It is, yeah.
And it's also kind of boring in some ways, but it's by today's standards, maybe. But like, I just don't understand why. Like, I guess it was so intriguing, this idea of a human-made thing. I guess in the time of this era where they're sending so much up to space, the idea of it like coming back and maybe it kills you, maybe it's super intelligent, it's seen all these things.
Yeah.
I guess that was just so cool to people. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around.
Funny enough, they've Star Trek fans in various forums and whatnot. Also, for this reason, some fans now append to the Star Trek 1979 movie the punning subtitle "Where Nomad has gone before," which is certainly pretty funny. The biographical picture of scientist Jackson Roykirk, which actually I think, Dave, you showed us earlier, is actually of the director Mark Daniels wearing Scotty's dress uniform.
But no, is he wearing the kilt too?
It's unknown because I believe the picture is only from basically the waist up, so I don't think it really matters.
Yeah.
Let's do one more, and I think we're done at this point. The song Uhura sings is the same song she sings to entertain Lieutenant Riley in Star Trek, the original series, The Conscience of the King, after he is transferred back to lonely duty in engineering. The lyrics were written by Gene Roddenberry himself.
Of
and it
course.
shows.
Woo!
Of course.
Yeah.
Does anybody like Uhura's
I have a fun
singing?
fact for you on this one.
Does anyone
What's
find
that?
Uhura's singing soothing?
I have
No.
a fun fact. Out of all 725 episodes of the Star Trek franchise in 2013 and prior, of all 725 episodes of all the different Star Treks,
Mm-hmm.
The Guardian, which is I guess a newspaper, recommended this episode as one of 6 episodes, the top 6 episodes.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
I don't think I'm going to put it in my top 6, but
No, I know. That
some
was
people enjoy it.
surprising. Yeah.
It's clear to me that a lot of people do. Like, that's kind of my point tonight more than anything, is like, I think this episode's good, but it's
Good.
clear that
It is
it connected with a lot of other fans and writers and people for a long time after this.
You know, one thing that you guys said earlier.
They put on the story in the paper. 6 Star Trek episodes to watch. This was one of them out of the 725.
But is that deserved, Dad? Is that does this just?
I don't think it is, but I mean, I'm not the expert, so I would leave that to the experts.
Okay, let's go to Adam. What do you think?
You know, you guys earlier were saying, you know, the disconnect with Spock melding with a machine, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't see that as off. I think that, you know, one thing that this show did well is that Nomad or V'ger or whatever has personality, has developed a conscience. So maybe it's more of a, you know, the android or something, you know, where you're trying to, you know, strive for better or whatever. But I didn't find that off. And what did you call it? It wasn't mind melding. It was
probing.
He calls it a mind probe in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. But clearly there's something more there. And I think Dave, maybe that's the connection people have, is like, it's more of a personality, you know, versus a machine, right? It might be a machine, but it's stuck in but it has something.
Well, Spock says it almost qualifies as a life form, but it's clear that they don't consider it a life form, and they ultimately have to destroy this thing.
We destroy everything. I mean, you know, in those days, but you know, you fast forward to the next gen, you know, that would have been treated very differently, I think, you know, by Picard's group. But anyway,
by Michael Burnham's group too, just for the record. Michael Burnham would have handled this very different than Spock. I think she'd be like, no, we need to understand it.
I got an interesting one for you too. Is that the top 10 bad villains of Star Trek all time? Okay, the number 1 top 10 all time is this thing called Q, which is like QAnon, I guess, right?
No, it's from Star Trek: The Next Generation. But anyway, yeah,
not related.
Okay, Q is number 1. Number 2 is called the Doris sisters. I don't know who they are.
The Duras sisters.
Duras sisters. They're Klingons
from Next Gen,
okay.
mostly.
Number 3, Nomad. Number 3.
There's that's I don't
like
agree with that at
above
all.
like Khan. You think Nomad is a better villain than Khan?
Khan is definitely a better villain than this.
So keep going, Ted. I want to know more.
This list is nonsense.
Yeah, I want to know all this list now.
Yeah, Ted, keep going.
Okay, number 4, Dr. Soran.
That's
from,
Malcolm McDowell from.
He's from Generations.
He killed Kirk, so I guess that's fit.
He killed Kirk, so yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
A guy that looks like Abraham Lincoln, Professor James Moriarty.
He's a hologram. Yeah.
He's hologram from Next Gen.
Yeah. Ooh, number 6 is Lore. Lore.
I like Laura. I've always liked Laura.
Data's
Laura too.
Altered ego. Yeah.
But he's definitely a villain.
Number 7 is a bad-looking dude, Gul Dukat.
Gul Dukat.
Gul Dukat from
Dukat, yeah.
Gul Dukat.
Look at all these. These are all villains that you're missing, Ted, because you refuse to watch the newer stuff.
List, okay?
Keep going. Keep going.
Number 8, the Borg.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Not the Borg Queen, just the Borg. Okay.
Number 9, General Chang.
I love General Chang.
Played by the great Christopher Plummer, who we lost last week.
Country.
Yep.
Number 10 is Khan Noonien Singh.
I'd bump him up.
These are all great
Khan
villains.
higher,
I have to question the order here, but it's
maybe it's not supposed to be like the order. It's just
I don't think that Q is a villain, honestly.
Sometimes
it says from Q to Khan, the 10 best Star Trek villains ever.
10 best, so it's not ranked then.
Okay.
No, this just how they pick.
Like those are all good, but
I thought it was interesting that this was one of the top 3.
I don't know if I agree with that, but anyway.
Nomad is less of a villain to me and more of sort of a tragic victim of circumstance. You know, it's like
he might have killed more people than anybody.
It did, but it was kind of like what it wasn't its fault. It was kind of like sort of this random chance
that kind of merged
made it the way it was.
Like I wanted to sterilize everything.
Right. I think it was sort of like how it had this relentless logic. And I think it's fitting that Spock says it because even though he's so logical, he's not like coldly logical to the point where he doesn't have any empathy for other beings or life.
I think it's just a population control robot. I think that's what it is.
Killed 4 billion.
4 billion on 4 planets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good number.
that was a big deal. Not wiped out an entire species. That was genocide. That was bad.
So I don't know about you guys, but I'm interested in figuring out what you guys rated this episode.
All right, let's get to ratings, as they say, and pick our next episode as well. So the Changeling. So I guess Jeff, we're not gonna get a rating from him tonight. So I'll go first, and I like this is good. But like I think 7.5 is where I'm gonna go for tonight.
Wow.
I'll go an 8, Dave.
An 8, okay.
Yep. 8.
I'll go an 8 too.
8, and to Jody.
I'm with Dave, 7.5. That's exactly what I thought. And then he said it.
7.5. Okay, so that's a 7.8 among the 4 of us. Very consistent with sort of its IMDb rating, but all of the IMDb ratings are in this kind of territory, in the 7s roughly. So 7.7 is our average. I also here made a list. So all the episodes you see highlighted in yellow, we have not watched yet. So you can see here, starting with the season 1 episodes.
I'll let Jody pick the next one.
You can see there's a couple here for season
I'm picking.
2.
Yeah, you pick Dave.
And then our season 3 is the season we've watched the least amount of so far. So, but
Let's do let's do the Man Trap.
the Man Trap. Oh, okay.
First season.
Season 1, episode 5. Okay. Well, probably
Is it 5? I think it's 6.
but based on my system.
Oh, okay. All right.
So the Man Trap. Okay, so we'll be back in a week to watch the Man Trap.
I remember watching it, but I don't remember what it's about. Just remember
Is that the one
name.
with the salt vampire? Is that the salt vampire one?
It might be.
Or
Could
is
be.
that?
I've seen
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is the salt
Yeah.
vampire one. And so technically, it's kind of like episode. It's very early. I think it was the first one they aired outside of like the main continuity. So we will watch that one. We'll watch the Man Trap, whatever ordering system you go by. It's early in the first season next week, and and that we're gonna close the book on what was this called? The Changeling.
Oh, we forgot to do one really important thing.
What's that?
Miri. There we go. Now we've done it.
Oh, we haven't mentioned it yet. I was looking too at our ratings, and our panel
That
gave
one's for you,
Miri-
Adam.
Our panel gave Miri an 8.5. It's not like this is a
No, I didn't give Miri no 8.5.
You gave it
What did Jody give Miri, please?
8.5. It was his rating.
How
I
much?
didn't give Miri an 8.5.
You did.
No.
That's what.
You did.
I gotta
because
go back
John
and look at that
Forward.
episode.
Oh wait, no, you 4.5. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's no way I gave Miri an 8.5.
Yeah, you gave it a 4.5. Sorry. No,
Yeah.
I was looking at the wrong line. I was looking at Arena.
That is some serious pedo vibes. Anyway,
Yeah.
we've already covered that one. We don't. Need
I thought
to
that
cover
we
it
gave
again.
Miri a higher rating, but no, this is wrong. Okay, I gotta fix the spreadsheet. Cells are not pulling from the right places in some.
Uh-oh.
Data work needs to be done. All right, so that's. Is there anything
I
else?
think
we want to
Adam's
talk about?
leaving.
Oh no,
Adam's like, I'm leaving. I'm going in the snow.
Want to see my new puppy?
Sure.
Oh, she's out. Never mind.
Is she like
I've
a
already
little-
seen pictures, but anyway, that's fine.
If you put like a little horn thing on it, would look like an alien. Like whatever that time
What's that episode in Star Trek where they did that? I can't remember that.
we gotta find it where it's like the dog that they just put like the plushie.
Oh, they put like the prosthetic plushie thing on. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That's
You
like,
know what
looks
you
like
need to
that
do,
dog.
Adam, for Halloween? You need to find a dog-sized version of the alien from Alien. You got to make your dog an alien. I know how much you and I both enjoy the Alien series.
When they run and you can make all the legs go crazy.
Yeah, you can just see it.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
That's
That's your quest.
Okay, I can do that. I can just get one of our makers in China to do that. So
All
There you go.
right. Okay, let's wrap. We're just gonna wrap things up. Anything else on the Changeling you wanted to say before we sign off?
sayonara.
No.
Yeah,
See you later,
watch it.
Changeling. See you later, Nomad. Boom.
Watch it. It's decent.
Good job, Kirk. You talked that robot to
Yeah.
And
You
his
can't.
demon
You
outside.
talk computers out of programs all the time.
All right. On Tuesdays, we do Deep Space Nine rewatches. We have been watching every episode, in that case, in order. We just finished up season 2 last night, and we'll be going into
Thank
season
God.
3 next week. So if you want to know everything about Deep Space Nine, we're starting into the good stuff. The Defiant is about to show up, and we're about to get into a whole new
When
era
they
of
finally
that
realized the series needed to actually go on treks
show. It needed a ship
because
yeah.
it's called Star
You
Trek.
know, guys, you've been talking about how it's going to get good now for about a month.
I know, because I think because part of season 2,
Season 2 is like what, 26 episodes or something?
it's a
24?
long season.
Yeah.
The first 2 seasons of Deep Space Nine are so different than the next 5.
Oh, they are. Yeah.
So they're and like even like the main character, Commander Sisko, he's barely in that show in the first 2 seasons. Like, so it's amazing to watch it back in order like this. I really do enjoy this podcast experience. But it's almost like we know the show's better than this, so it's almost like
You're just waiting for the good seasons to show up.
a little bit, yeah. But now we're here. So if and then on here on Wednesdays we're on random episodes. We're original series. Oh, there's the puppy. Yes.
Oh, big already, eh?
Yeah. On his feet.
Wow.
Oh, it's going to be a big dog.
Big dog.
Right?
This Saturday night, we'll be here for Star Trek Radio Theater as we'll be doing Deep Space Nine, and we're continuing our Mirror Universe theme for the second season as we'll be doing crossover, the first time that the Deep Space Nine people dealt with the Mirror Universe. And I'll be playing Sisko, and Jane's going to be playing one version of Kira. We're going to have Jessica Chan back as playing another version of Kira. Jeff Mater, wherever he is, as Dr. Bashir.
Wherever he is.
Yeah, and
your long lost brother.
Yeah, my long lost brothers. We got Kevin Millard in the role of O'Brien. Couple of O'Briens. We got Michael Chan as the Mirror Garrick and the Mirror Odo. Mott's going to be playing Mirror Quark, and Ashley playing Mirror Jedzia Dax and a few others. So check that out on Saturday night at 9. And lastly, our other channel, Super Mater Brothers Podcasting, which we will return in 2 weeks with Big Brother Canada. That will be Jeff, Jaemeel, and I. If Jeff, wherever he is, he will hopefully be there.
If he returns.
If it doesn't conflict with a Leaf game.
Hockey season,
Yeah, the Leafs are doing well this year, so Jeff's like got conflicting.
Not so well the last game.
Yeah,
we tied 1-1 tonight after 2.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's what he's doing.
And then at the end of the month, we'll be doing Trivial Debates. Jeff is going to be hosting this next episode of Trivial Debates, which will air on February 28th.
Who are the contestants so far?
I don't know that yet. I just hosting. So check that out on February 28th. And I think those are all our things. Those are things I can plug. That's it. Let's close the book on the Changeling and call it a night. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Nice
Thank you. And from all of us here, Live Long and Podcast. Live Long and Podcast.